What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel, and it's time for another UFL power ranking and prediction. Again, I upload one of these videos every single Friday, and today we're going to be talking about what's going to prove to be, at least in my opinion, a very, very pivotal Week 5. Before we begin this video out a little later than I wanted it, I was in a tornado drill as tornadoes have ripped through the state that I currently live in, and that is Nebraska. Many towns have been decimated, and if you also live in Nebraska, I mean, it is absolutely terrible. The amount of damage and amount of people that have been affected by these tornadoes, one of which in the Omaha area was pretty darn close to an EF5, if not there. So I share my condolences with anyone out there who lives in the state, who has family, friends that were affected by this horrible, horrible natural disaster, and I hope many of you can share sentiments out there as well. So sorry for the super random tone shift, but that is why this video is getting out a little bit late, and I figured that you all should know that that is happening if you are not aware of it. It's really, really bad. It's very, very devastating to see, and I share my condolences with anyone that has been affected. It luckily did miss where I live. I am okay. Most of my friends are okay, but a lot of my friends and family have been, or I should say, my family's okay, but a lot of my friends and family of friends have been affected by this natural disaster, and I would like to share my condolences with those people. So I apologize for that tone shift, and I apologize for the tone shift back to now talking about football, but let's talk about the Week 5 power rankings and predictions for the UFL. But before we dive into the video, you guys know the drill. Like, comment, share, subscribe, even watching my videos, all of those and more are ways that you can help support the channel. Pretty much any way you interact with the channel helps to support it. We'll dive on into my power rankings now. And again, you know what? Let's do a little thought exercise for a second. Find something to complain about with the Birmingham Stallions. Oh, wait. Can't find anything, right? I mean, this team is just built to win championships. Top to bottom, this team looks absolutely phenomenal. The two-quarterback system of Matt Corral and Adrian Martinez looks great. CJ Maribel and Ricky Person look phenomenal. This is an amazing group of wide receivers. We even saw Amari Rogers really come to life just this past week. He has really stepped up. And again, one guy that's not on that list is Benjamin Victor, who has seen less production than what I thought he was going to see this year. He's still really good. They have one of the best tight ends in the league in Jay Sternberger. They have a loaded defense that still leads, even though they did not generate a sack last week, still leads the league in sacks. I believe they're one of the tops, if not the tops in the league in tackles for loss. Their defense is absolutely stifling in the secondary, the linebackers, the defensive line. This offense is built. The offensive line is creating pushback. It's not allowing much pressure back to the quarterback. They're top 3 in pretty much every statistical category you can find on UFL.com. Even when you go into some of the advanced stats, Birmingham still consistently ranks at very least top 3 in pretty much every major category. This is a team that is just outstanding. I have nothing bad to say about this team. A little bit shaky at times against DC. The offensive line did let up 4 sacks. And again, my one gripe with Birmingham last week is that, yeah, sure, maybe the offense is turning over the ball a little bit too frequently, as Birmingham does have a flat, even turnover rate right now. That may be something that has to change in games down the line, especially when you play a team as good as St. Louis. Traveling on the road against Memphis could prove to be an interesting challenge, and then you have to go on the road to play San Antonio there as well. But besides that, I have no complaints with this Birmingham team. Skip Holtz has done an absolutely phenomenal job. My only other thing I'm curious to watch with this team is which of the two quarterbacks is going to start emerging as that true favorite. It happened last year with Birmingham in this two-quarterback system. Very interested to see what happens with that two-quarterback system moving forward. But this is clear as day, easy as pie. Birmingham is the #1 team in the UFL, and that will go until, hey, maybe they even have to lose 2 games. And even if they lose that game against St. Louis, I probably still don't know if I'm going to drop Birmingham out of the #1 spot. They are that good. Now, talking about St. Louis, They are my number 2 team. 3-1 on the year after that week 1 loss to Michigan, where they just couldn't really find it, couldn't find the offensive rhythm, couldn't get things going. They've won their last 3 and clearly look like the second best team. Now, the gripe that I had with St. Louis coming into this week was that maybe their defensive front wasn't the best, right? But it started to show signs this past week against Memphis that it has life, that it is a really, really good pass rushing team, despite all the injuries that it does have, including what coming into the year were supposed to be some of their better pass rushers. A.J. McCarron and this offense are lights out. They will put up however many points they need to be able to win. Now, they haven't had to put up more than 25 points in a game, but in a game where their defense does struggle. We saw that against Arlington. We saw it in spurts against San Antonio, and we saw it in spurts against Memphis here as well, where the defense just really struggled to create a whole lot. This is an offense that can go out, and I have no doubts that can go out and put up however many points they need to. Jacob Sailors was phenomenal this past week. A.J. McCarron, to what many would call sadly through his first pick last week, but still one of the top quarterbacks in the league right now, might very well be the front runner for UFL MVP. Marcel Aitman, Hakeem Butler, Darius Shepard. They got a ton of phenomenal weapons, and their best weapon came back last week. Ja'Cour Pearson had 10 catches for 70 yards and a touchdown just last week. He's only played in 1 game. He is a phenomenal weapon. This is a loaded St. Louis wide receiver room that, albeit is dealing with some injuries. I believe both Butler and Shepard are a little bit banged up, but you have Jake Sutherland there at tight end. He's caught 2 touchdowns this year. And I mean, this defense that is absolutely phenomenal now. That back 7 really haven't had a whole lot of questions about. Yes, maybe it can improve in some things. That defensive front, you wanted to start see them generating more pressure, which was going to be hard to do considering all the injuries that they do have. But this is a St. Louis team that, all in all, you really can't complain much about. Improve a couple things on the defensive end, and once they get healthy, aka I know Mateo Durant is hurt right now. He's had a phenomenal couple games when he has played, and a couple of their wide receivers, I believe both Butler and Shepard, are a little bit banged up. But when this team is at full strength, especially when this team gets back to full strength on that defensive side, this is very, very scary. And right now, the only team that I can see challenging the Birmingham Stallions for the UFL championship might very well be that UFL championship game. We'll have to wait and see. Number 3 is still consistent from last week. It is 3-1 San Antonio, and the Brahmas have probably been the feel-good story of the UFL season so far. It might very well be once the season has ended. Chase Garbers went down with injury, so last week Quentin Dormady took over. That was his stat line from last week. 23 of 37, 269. There should be yards after that. 1 touchdown and 1 pick. He was absolutely phenomenal. Granted, yes, he did miss a couple of throws, and that interception he threw, I think he definitely would like to have back. But Dormady was a great, great quarterback for this team, and it's Dormady's show now. You have to be able to give him some run support, though. John Lovett was pretty solid in that past game in the win against Michigan this past week. On the season, just crossed, or actually just hit, as he's sitting at 100 yards even on the year. Anthony McFarland is still hurt. Who knows if he is going to end up playing this week, but you have some absolutely phenomenal weapons on the outside. Jontre Kirkland's one of the leading receivers in the UFL. Marquez Stevenson is great. Cody Latimer is the leading receivers, I believe, amongst tight ends this year. And again, Quentin Dormady and Latimer had chemistry when they played with the Orlando Guardians in the XFL last year. Justin Smith is a great weapon. And then when you go down to this defense, it is improved and improved week over week. Jordan Mosley might be one of the best safeties in the entire league. They have a great group of defensive backs. The defensive line is starting to find production, although it's mainly that defensive back 7, the linebackers and the defensive backs, that have the production for this defense. I am realizing now the shirt I'm wearing is not conducive to having a green screen. Oh well, deal with it. This is a team that I really, really like, and I've started to believe in more and more and more as the season goes on. There are a couple gripes I have with this team. I'll mention them again because I mentioned them last week, so I won't touch too much on them. Penalties and third downs. They are a good third down defense, but they are the most penalized team in the league per game, and they are not a great third down offense. Once they can get disciplined, once they can get that third down dilemma figured out, continue what you're doing defensively on third down, absolutely. Continue to force teams into those 3rd and longs and make it really difficult for the opposing offense to go get that first down. You have to start converting those third downs. Arlington is going to be a tough game this week. You got to go on the road against DC, and who knows? Houston just got their first win this past week. They might get hot. So come May 12th, that could be a very, very different sort of scenario we are talking about there. So you got 3 straight road games coming up. Some of the things have got to get hammered out, because if you lose those 3 games on the road, coming back home against a team like Arlington, then finishing out with Birmingham and St. Louis, very tough back 3 games. You got to be able to win at least 1, maybe 2 of these games on the road and fix a couple of those things I talked about earlier. Again, not much change so far. In fact, the top half of my power rankings have stayed perfectly the same. Even though DC came out with a loss against Birmingham, I really do like how they played. They were able to turn the Stallions offense over. They were able to get through that offensive line. They generated 4 sacks, and they did not allow a sack to a team that had 15 sacks in their past 2 games. They were able to stifle this Birmingham pass rush, although that being said, Jordan Ta'amu did not have his best game. He's still one of the better quarterbacks in this league, but he's starting to hover near that 50% completion mark, which you'd like to see him be a little bit higher in. 6 touchdowns, 2 picks. He's still one of the better quarterbacks talent-wise in this league. 21 carries for 104 yards there as well. Cameron Harris is starting to find that rhythm here and there are a ton of weapons for DC to be able to rely on. 3 of them that I have listed are their 3 leading wide receivers, and Harmon, Scott, and Rowland. You have a ton of other guys. I know Kiki QT is another weapon they have out there, among many others. Jordan Ta'amu has a plethora of wide receivers to throw to. It probably is the deepest wide receiver room in the league, maybe besides Birmingham, because what isn't Birmingham the best at right now? But this defense, while it has good players, it sits at the bottom in pretty much every statistical category. I believe they're the worst defense when it comes to yards per game. Passing yards per game, I don't believe that their secondary has performed very, very well. Yet this is, again, a defense with good players. Malik Fisher might be the most, one of the most talented defensive edge rushers in the league, just based off of pure talent. Anthony Hines and Francis Bernard coming into the year, that's a very scary 1-2 combo at linebacker. And in this defensive back, there have been some guys that haven't produced as well as you'd like them to, yet I still really like a lot of the pieces on this DC defense. But a lot of the times the numbers don't lie. This is the defense that has to start creating more. They have to get back on the right foot. And I even think the offense needs to create a little bit more. Call some better plays, run some better routes, get this run game a little bit more involved to give Jordan Ta'amu some help, right? You got St. Louis coming up this week. Very, very good. It's going to be a very fun game. You get them at home. If DC can win that one, especially if this defense can play well and hold what is a very, very dynamic St. Louis offense, this is the team that you can start to feel really good about. They've started slow. Again, you'll lose on the road to Birmingham. No shame in that at all. Let's see if you can get this one at home against St. Louis. It's the first of 3 straight at home for the DC Defenders, who I have sitting at number 4. Moving now technically into the bottom half of my power rankings. Still a team I like a whole lot more than when I liked them at the beginning of the year, and that is the Michigan Panthers. They're sitting at 2-2. They just lost to San Antonio this past week. Turnovers are really plaguing this team. I believe off the top of my head, they have a -3 or -4 turnover margin, which is the worst in the league right now. And it's just been a very inconsistent team. One week they look like world beaters and they can beat anyone, aka the game against St. Louis, the game against Houston. Even at times in that game against Birmingham, they looked like it as well. However, you also take a look at this team and say, well, if they can be really good, I mentioned they're inconsistent, that also means they can be really bad, aka the game against San Antonio, and again, at spurts against Birmingham, even at spurts against St. Louis and Houston, they were just not very good at all, and it starts with this offensive line. They have to be able to create pushback. EJ Perry was starting to find his rhythm, didn't have a great game last week, so they brought in Danny Etling, and for what it's worth, Danny Etling did really, really well. He's played in, I believe, 3 games this year. Maybe he's even played in all 4, but the one last week against San Antonio is where he's gotten the most playing time, and he went 11 of 14. Those 2 other incompletions were from earlier in the year. He went 11 of 14, 105 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. That's not a bad stat line for Danny Etling at all. Now, is he going to be the starting quarterback? I'm not too sure. I do believe that EJ Perry still talent-wise a little bit better than Danny Etling, especially because of EJ Perry's dual threat ability on the the ground. Sorry, I don't quite know what happened there. EJ Perry's stat line got messed up. No idea where I got 512 rushing yards from. No, 151 rushing yards. That's more like it. That's what EJ Perry has on the season, along with 4 rushing touchdowns. Matthew Colburn really started to get involved this past week, but I still believe, as there's the typo right there as well, that was fixed. Matthew Colburn was great this past week, and he really started to get involved in this offense, which I think is good. Not only does it give EJ Perry some run support, it gives a guy like Wes Hills some help. You need to give the ball to Wes Hills more. He only had 4 carries this past week. He is the most dynamic running back in this league, maybe besides Mark Thompson. Wes Hills is a guy that can lead this team in rushing if he gets his bulk of carries. 37 carries through 4 games. Sure, that means he's getting right near that 9 carry per game mark. He needs to have more. I want to see him get 12, 13, 14, 15 touches per game because he is that good of a player. He is that vital in their offense, and they need to involve him more. Okay, I'll step off my soapbox and talk about Marcus Sims. The guy has really emerged as a big downfield threat wide receiver this year, and he has caught all 3 passing touchdowns that the Panthers have thrown this season so far. Trey Quinn is another phenomenal weapon. Devin Ross has been there, but it's really been Marcus Sims, Trey Quinn, and at times Cole Hikuntini that has really been the pass-catching options there as well. Get Wes Hills more involved in this offense. He is really, really good. Get him involved. Defensively, this is the defense that, much like the offense, seems to be up and down, but it's a lot more consistent than the offense is. I think you can expect a lot more out of this defense week in and week out than you can with their offense, right? Daniel Wise, Breland Speaks are some great talent on the defensive front. Frank Jinda at linebacker, 30 tackles on the year. 3 of them have gone for loss of yardage. Noah Dawkins has been good. Kai Nakua, as Michigan plays that free safety style, 26 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 4 pass breakups. He has 2 picks this year. A great safety tandem there as well, as Michigan usually plays with 5 defensive backs on the field. I still really like this Michigan team overall. Again, EJ Perry, can he bounce back from from a not so great performance this past week? And you got to get Wes Hills more involved in this offense. Offenses start finding consistency and stop turning the football over. Tough one coming up here against Memphis. That one should be an interesting one. We'll dive on into number 6 here. And look, I think 1 through 5 in the power rankings are pretty set in stone. I think 1 through 5, maybe you can mix around a couple here and there, and I could hear cases for that. But in my personal opinion, 1 through 5 is pretty set. It didn't change from last week. The bottom portion of my power rankings did. Now, 6 through 8, you can have anyone in whatever order you want to have them in and make any case you want. Personally, I am going, if things would, personally, I am going to go with the Houston Roughnecks. Don't know what happened with my graphics there, but it's okay. It's fixed now. I am going with the Houston Roughnecks at number 6. Here is why. They got their first win this past week against the Arlington Renegades. Cool. We're going to talk more about Arlington later. This is about Houston right now. The defense has shown it is stout all season long, and while they might not rank high in a ton of statistical categories, no, they haven't played the best offenses so far, including giving up 34 points to an inconsistent offense in Michigan that just a couple weeks ago looked like world beaters. It looked like they could get anything they wanted at any point they wanted in that game. DC's got a pretty solid option in Chase Cookus and company, have been pretty good offensively for Memphis as well at times. But when you take a look at it, I mean, Reed Sinnett has provided some life into this passing offense. TJ Pledger really started to get things going for this run game this past week, and a run game that got Mark Thompson back. TJ Pledger is probably, I don't necessarily want to call TJ Pledger a 1A, 1B with Mark Thompson because I think Mark Thompson is a lot better than TJ Pledger, but Mark Thompson's the guy. He got 9 carries this past week, did get into the end zone in his first game back. What a difference he makes in this offense. This is an offense that I just saw playing with a lot more confidence. They had their guy that they revolved the offense around, and they were comfortable not even using him. They were comfortable using TJ Pledger in that spot, but just the fear of Mark Thompson coming in was a very, very big thing, and a thing that I thought Houston used really, really well. I expect Mark Thompson to, in the end, get more carries than TJ Pledger throughout this season, but Mark Thompson coming back is a huge, huge boost to this Roughneck offense. You want to talk about their wide receivers as well? No guy that really is going to super widely impress you, but you got 4 wide receivers over 100 yards. Those are Hall, Butler, Chisholm, and Cyril Grayson, who's a name that I have not spoken of this season. He's got 8 catches for 102 yards. Really started to step up this past week against the Arlington Renegades. And defensively, you got a ton of just dudes. Reuben Foster might be one of the best defenders in this league. I've said that before. Ton of great experience in this defensive back room. A lot of guys that are playing really, really well. And you take a look at this defensive front. They've just generated tackle for loss after tackle for loss, especially Ethan Westbrook, who was phenomenal last week, by the way, on the defensive line for the Houston Roughnecks. I think this is a team where you're going to see confidence start to build. You're going to see momentum start to really build with this Roughneck team. And I'm not necessarily saying that they're going to go make the playoffs and win the league. Not what I'm saying. But you got Birmingham coming up this week. That's a tough matchup. And actually, the rest of your schedule is pretty difficult. A lot of good teams there. But if this team is able to keep the game close against Birmingham, maybe knock off the game against St. Louis at home, maybe even give Birmingham a little bit of a challenge, pull off the upset, watch out. Because if this Houston team gets rolling, I do think they have the potential to be very, very dangerous. Still too many question marks for me. I thought the defenses played really well all season long, but how much life can this offense really pick up? I think it will because Mark Thompson is back, but how does it compare to the likes of Birmingham and St. Louis and DC and San Antonio, right? Something curious to watch with Houston. They're one of the more interesting teams right now, even though they just got their first win. They have their star back in Mark Thompson. Okay, now let's talk about the Arlington Renegades. There's a very simple reason that I do not have them at the bottom of my power rankings right now. Luis Perez. That's really all that I need to say. Even though he did not have the greatest week last week, he is still one of the better quarterbacks in the league. In fact, I think he's leading the league in passing yards. And he's got some great weapons that honestly he just didn't really utilize this past week. I mean, Tyler Vaughns, I think, had 1 catch. J.P. Payton did not have a single reception this past week. Deontay Burnett was that lead receiver, and no discredit to Burnett, but guys like Tyler Vaughns and J.P. Payton, you have to get them involved in this offense. They are really good. Give credit to the Houston Roughnecks. They were able to shut them down. Isaiah Winstead is there, and Sal Cannella had a pretty decent game this past weekend as well. But this offense played with no confidence. I just don't know where to begin when talking about this offense. They looked really flat. They looked like they couldn't do anything. And even when a guy like Luis Perez has just an off day, you know it's not going to be your day. Arlington fans, you might want to be in panic mode right now. Okay, maybe you might not want to be in panic mode, but you might be in panic mode right now, as this is the story of the season for Arlington so far. The offense has played generously well, right? The defense has fallen off completely. I don't know where this defense has gone, but the defense that helped them win an XFL title last year is not the same defense that we are seeing out of Arlington this season. Vic Beasley is not producing enough for my liking. You probably want to see that guy have 4 or 5 sacks by now. He's a guy that's supposed to be really dynamic. And look, just having him on the field is a threat. I don't think they're utilizing him to his best abilities, and he's not producing to the best of his abilities as well. This is a defensive back group that, oh boy, where do I start? They just have not been able to defend the pass. They couldn't defend the pass against Reed Sinnett in Houston, and this is no slight to Reed Sinnett. He might be the worst starting quarterback in this league when you just want to flat out compare everybody that is playing right now. Even Quentin Dormady might be better than what Reed Sinnett has to offer. Now, granted, that's just one man's opinion. You could think differently, but the linebackers are really the only defensive group that I think are playing fairly well for Arlington. This team has defensive talent. There is no denying this team has defensive talent. They have to utilize it better. They have to have that defensive production step up. They are down there with DC in terms of one of the worst defenses statistically in the league, but this quarterback to wide receiver connection, they had an off day against Houston. Chance to bounce back and beat San Antonio this upcoming week. It's going to be a very, very interesting game. You got a good 1-2-3 combo at running back as well. Davion Smith, Lindsey Scott, and a guy that I didn't put on here, Letty Brown, as well. Some really good players there. The offense, I don't have worries about. This defense has got to find something. I don't think the offense is in panic mode. I think the defense is in panic mode. It has to find something to start working if this team is going to want to get their first win of the year and have a chance to defend their spring league title in the UFL, which means by process of elimination, don't know why that word was so hard for me to say, friends, the Memphis Showboats I have down here at number 8. Now, why do I have Memphis at number 8? Well, I just don't think this team is playing with confidence right now at all. They have very, very low confidence. Chase Cookus has not been himself as of late. Now, it was great to see Darius Victor really step up. That is definitely one bright spot you do like to see in Memphis. They moved to Titus Swen primarily in week 3 to try to get something going against Birmingham. Yeah, good luck with that. You're not going to get a whole lot going against Birmingham. They have to play them again in 1 week. But you get the Michigan Panthers here coming up this week, and I mean, this is a wide receiver group that, I mean, is fairly solid. Adams, Davis, Papel, I have no complaints about that, but Chase Cookus was not cooking this past week, and just this team, I still think, feels defeated from that incredible comeback performance San Antonio had in week 2. And I mean, this is the defensive line that, look, I've put a couple guys on screen here. While Maximilian Roberts looked good throughout the first 2 or 3 weeks, he hasn't produced since. John Atkins is a guy that you figured coming in was going to be a really dynamic threat for Memphis and definitely their best defensive lineman. Nope, he hasn't really produced that well at all. You look at that linebacker group outside of Max Roberts, even including Max Roberts, they haven't performed the best. This is a defensive backfield that hasn't performed the best either. And I mean, they're just getting crushing defeat after crushing defeat now. They were up for a lot of that game against St. Louis. They had the momentum. They were in the lead. They were playing well. Come the second half, and everything just shuts down. So this team plays well in the first half from what I've seen, and they really shut down in the second half. Now, with how inconsistent Michigan's been, which version of the Panther team decides to show up, right? Now, I said that everything is bad. You take a look at that headline, everything is bad. And for the most part, it is, statistically. I still think there's a lot of good upsides with Chase Cookus because of what we've seen with him out of this season so far. Darius Victor perking up. He's perking up at the right time. That is a great sign to see. You want Darius Victor going. You want to give Chase Cookus some help. But this offensive line is not that great. This defensive front is honestly pretty solid at defending the run, but the secondary is just not been that great. Nothing is that great for Memphis, and while there are bright spots, the low confidence is why I have Memphis down here at 8. Until they can show me they can play with some confidence, hey, if they pull this win out against the Michigan Panthers, sorry, I was clapping under the table. Job well done. They'll likely move up in my power rankings next week. But I need to start them playing with confidence, and I need to see them play a really good 30 minutes in a second half this year. I haven't seen that so far. I didn't even see that against Houston. It's what cost them a game against San Antonio. And while they were competitive with Birmingham and St. Louis, albeit the 2 best teams in the league right now, on the road, they were not competitive in the second half whatsoever. You got to play a good second half to compete in this league. And that's what Memphis has got to do here to move up in my power rankings. They are sitting at 1 and 3 and last in my personal power rankings. Let us dive on in now to the weekly predictions for this week. We will start out with this game right here, which I think might very well be the game to watch this week. It is the San Antonio Brahmas versus the Arlington Renegades. Texas on Texas crime. Will the Brahmas improve to 4-1 and continue this feel-good story going? Or are the Renegades going to be able to get their first win? Well, here's what each team needs to do to be able to make sure that doesn't happen. By the way, all statistics you saw were courtesy of UFL.com, and all lines and odds you see are from Fox, and they are as of recording this video. This game, Saturday, April 27th, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. You can find this one on Fox locally if your local channel provider well, I say if your local Fox station provides it. If not, you will get the other game that I'll talk about in just a little bit. Let's talk about the Brahmas and Renegades first. Quentin Dormady was excellent this past week, and he's going to have to be again to be able to beat this Renegades team that, look, Luis Perez is not going to have a bad game 2 games in a row. He's going to bounce back. He's going to have a really good performance, but Quentin Dormady is the guy that you need to watch playing the quarterback position here. Chase Garber's UFL season is likely done. He may very well come back at the end of the year. So this is Dormady's team now. He was Granted, again, as I said, he did miss some throws and things like that, but he was excellent this past week. He's going to need to be, again, make this Arlington defense pay. It's an Arlington defense that has been very, very bad to start this season. It is going to have to be a really good performance from Quentin Dormady here. Keep this Renegades secondary on their heels. But that means that Lovett is going to have to give Dormady some run support while Anthony McFarland is still out. And the wide receivers are going to need to put pressure on this defense as well. You have a ton of explosive weapons out there that I listed back on my power ranking slide. Lovett has really started to find his groove, and he likely will do so in this game as, again, the Renegades defense is just not proven it can stop much of anything, either on the ground or through the air. But defensively for San Antonio, it's about making Perez panic. It's about moving the pocket. It's about getting him outside. It's about making him feel uncomfortable, make him force some throws, much like the Roughnecks were able to do last week, and just provide countless and countless amounts of pressure. It made Perez panic, and that's what led to the bad game this past week. The Renegades are going to have to do the exact, or I should say the Brahmas are going to have to do the exact same thing. The Renegades want to look to avoid that, and Perez needs a bounce-back game here. If the Renegades are going to want to pull this one out, Perez needs to. It is not a maybe. He needs to have a better game this upcoming week, because if he doesn't, you're likely seeing the Renegades go home 0-5, and then at that point, any shot you have at making the playoffs is going to be really, really, really hard. The Renegades are a team that needs Perez to bounce back. It needs the offensive line to be good. Perez has got to find his top playmakers in Peyton and Vaughns, and the run game's got to give him support. But most importantly, Perez has got to stay calm in the pocket. The offensive line has got to give him protection. Perez just has to do his job as quarterback, not do anything too fancy. That's what's going to lead to a good bounce-back game for Luis Perez. Biggest question for probably any UFL team, though. Can the defense generate anything? I mean anything at all. A tackle for loss, a sack, a takeaway. Anything is going to help Arlington here in this game. The Brahmas have played really well down the stretch, and they are really, really hot. But this is a Renegades team that needs to generate something defensively. A takeaway would do it. They can't let the Brahmas just sit there and work. I do think the nightmare is going to get better for the Arlington. I do think the nightmare is going to get better for the Arlington Renegades. I don't know why the Brahmas logo is not showing up there, but I do have the Brahmas winning this game. There you go. I fixed it so it would show up. The Brahmas, I do have winning this game. The Renegades are going to make it competitive. Luis Perez is going to have a very, very good day, and I do believe that this is a Renegades team that is going to make a game here. However, the Brahmas are starting to really find their rhythm. This is a really hot team. I think Quentin Dormady is a great option to replace Chase Garbers. They have really explosive wide receivers, and while this defense may be able to force some tackles for loss, maybe even a takeaway, I don't think they're going to stop San Antonio's offense enough. So while I do think the nightmare is going to get better, Arlington is not going to go this season without a win. In fact, they may win 2 or 3 games this year at the very minimum. But I think the wrong place, wrong time to find your rhythm. It's actually a great place to find your rhythm, but I think they run into the wrong team to do so. The Brahmas take home the win, 24-21. As you just saw a minute ago, here is the other game on Fox that you could be watching. It's the Stallions versus the Roughnecks, and I'm honestly not going to talk about this one that much because I do think it is a mismatch for a ton of reasons. One, Birmingham is good at everything, and if you want one key for Birmingham to really put the nail in the coffin on Houston, just take away Mark Thompson's dynamic abilities. If you take away the run from Houston, make Reed Sinnett throw against this secondary, yeah, it's going to be a pretty good day for Birmingham. What quarterback emerges here is the thing that I'm curious to watch. Corral or Adrian Martinez? That's the big storyline for me. I can't wait to see what quarterback Skip Holtz goes with, especially as we get into playoff scenarios for the Birmingham Stallions. And the mismatch is so apparent. Now, Houston is coming off their first win of the year, but especially when you talk about Birmingham, I mean, they're really good at everything, and Houston is down towards the bottom in most statistical categories. I say most because there are a couple of upsides, but Houston does have a chance to make this one at very least interesting against Birmingham. Here's what you need to do. It's time to get Mark Thompson more involved in the offense. I don't know what it is with all the typos today, guys. apologize, but it is time to get Thompson more involved in this offense. In order to do that, though, this offensive line has got to step up. It's got to take away whatever pressure Birmingham is going to bring, and it's got to be able to provide some running holes for Mark Thompson to be able to get through. And the defense has got to do the same thing that Birmingham is going to look to do: create havoc into the backfield, get whatever quarterback is in for Birmingham on the ground, slow down their rush ability, make the quarterback rush their throws, because all in all, this is a pretty talented defense, and it is a pretty good defense, and it can generate a ton of pressure. Birmingham's offensive line didn't do a great job at handling pressure this week. Now, if we know Skip Holt's Stallions, they're going to make adjustments to that, right? But Houston is a team that I still believe leads the league in tackles for loss. So you got to be able to hound this backfield and make things difficult for Birmingham. However, that being said, I can't see the Roughnecks winning this game. Until Birmingham loses a game, I have belief that they won't. 34-16 is where I see the Stallions winning this one on the road in Houston. Again, this is the other game you can watch depending on where you are nationally on Fox. And we'll take a look at the games now being played on Sunday. This one, I thought that this was going to end up being the Fox game. Nope, it's the noon ESPN game in Washington, D.C. This is a very fascinating one. The Battlehawks and D.C. Defenders, an old XFL rivalry. Oh, this one is going to be fun there. The Defenders have home field this time around. So what needs to happen for St. Louis to be able to pull this one out? Well, I think the dynamic weapons are going to show out yet again. In fact, Ja'Cour Pearson, even though he had 10 catches this past week, he might have more in this game if DC can't shut him down. St. Louis is really, really hurt. And so you look at that bottom bullet point down there. Are the injuries going to start affecting St. Louis more now that they are on the road? And I know I forgot the question mark there, but that legitimately is something to watch. This is a team that is very beat up right now. They're very hurt on the defensive line. Mateo Durant is not playing. I believe Mike Rose, the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, is not playing either. A lot of their wide receiver weapons are out. Now this defensive line started to show signs even without those guys in that lineup who are hurt, and this is still a very dynamic group of wide receivers, even with the two guys that you won't have playing here. And again, Jacob Sailors has really started to step up. You still have Wayne Gallman back there as well. So I think the offense is going to show up nicely, but are the injuries going to matter more now that you have to play in a road environment against a pretty good offensive team and a team that's starting to find things out defensively, or at least you would hope so, or at least you would hope they do in this game in DC. We'll wait and see. Limit the big plays from Te'amu and company. That is your main goal defensively. If there's one gripe about St. Louis's defense, it's that, yes, while you'd like to see them generate more pressure, that has to start with limiting the big play ability of this Defenders offense. But that's exactly what the Defenders are going to want to do, as Jordan Te'amu is going to need to have himself a day, because like I talked about when I talked about St. Louis, this is the team that can score as many points as it needs to be able to pull out the win. So you have to be able to sort of play with the pace of St. Louis or control it, which is the third key I have for DC. You have to be able to control the tempo, keep the St. Louis offense off the field at all times, as this is the DC defense that has been on the field for the most in the entire league, right? They've been on the field the most out of any defense throughout the entire league, and the defense has got to find something here. I don't see them really having much luck. I'm going to go with St. Louis. I just think that this is a defense that, even though it's hurt, is going to start finding its rhythm. It's an offense that'll be too dynamic for DC to handle. Again, while they're trying to find that identity defensively, this is the wrong team to do it against here for DC. The Battlehawks are led by probably the best quarterback in the league in A.J. McCarron, and they're going to beat the DC Defenders. 26-20 is where I see this one playing out. Should be a fun one, though, from Washington, D.C. Fun rivalry matchup on Sunday afternoon. Moving on into Sunday late afternoon in Memphis, Tennessee. It's the Michigan Panthers and Memphis Showboats, and as I said, this may feel like a desperation kind of thing for the Memphis Showboats. However, for the Michigan Panthers, this is definitely going to be a team that is going to look to improve in their own ways, right? So what does each team need to do to win this game? So for the Michigan Panthers, it is about trusting your weapons, most notably, and I can't stress this enough, but most notably, Wes Hills. Please give this man the rock. He is very, very talented. He's honestly one of my favorite players in the league. I love Wes Hills. They got to get him involved with this offense a little bit more because he really is that dynamic of a player, and he is going to need to be the guy offensively for this Michigan Panther team. The defense, you got to be able to contain and pressure the backfield of Memphis. Get Chase Cookus out of rhythm. Get Darius Victor out of rhythm, because we really saw him step up this past week, especially since Cookus didn't necessarily have the best day. And this is the Michigan team that, throughout all its inconsistencies this year, have done a pretty good job at being able to generate pressure and be physical. So that's what I'm looking to see out of Michigan in this game. But it's all about special teams, special plays, and special players for this Michigan Panther special teams unit, because this is the first time we're going to see Jake Bates kicking outside, which is going to be something that's going to be really interesting to watch. And I also would consider sort of special teams. Now, this is more on the defense, obviously, but force some takeaways, maybe even get a special teams touchdown, a couple big kick returns, I think are really going to put some life into this team on the road against Memphis, who really does feel like they need to win this one. How do they do it? Well, Chase Cookus needs to find his rhythm. He was not very good this past week, and that starts with the offensive line, which is why my second bullet point is the line of scrimmage is so important. These, by the way, are two offensive lines that have really struggled here. I do believe that Memphis has a little bit more of the disadvantage, though, considering that, hey, their offensive nor defensive lines are really doing anything to help them win the battle on the line of scrimmage, yet Michigan is doing the exact opposite. While their offensive line is not great, I think throughout the course of the season, it's been a little bit better than Memphis has, even though it feels like E.J. Perry is absolutely running for his life in some plays. This is a defensive front that is undoubtedly able to create more pressure than what Memphis has shown so far this year. So winning that battle on the line of scrimmage is so important. You got to be able to frazzle this Michigan Panther offense, and you have to be able to defensively create some pushback, create some holes for Darius Victor, and give time for Chase Cookus to throw. And something must be found here for Memphis. A confidence thing, a big play, something. And I think something will be. 1.5-point favorites are the Showboats. Got him winning this one 22-16. I do think that line play is going to step up. I don't think Chase Cookus is going to have two bad games in a row, much like what we saw out of Louis Perez. And I just think that this team is ready to finally get back in that win column with the inconsistencies that Michigan has had this year. I'm, again, not necessarily banking on them being the lesser inconsistent versions of themselves, the team that feel like they can't do anything right, because I think Michigan is going to have some good moments here. I just think this is a do-or-die situation for Memphis, or at least it might feel that way, and the Showboats get the win 22-16 to wrap up my UFL predictions. That'll do it for my Week 5 Power Rankings and predictions. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see all you guys in the next video. Again, I'd like to share my condolences to anyone in the state of Nebraska, even I think some parts of Iowa and South Dakota got hit there as well. So anyone that's been affected by the tornadoes that have been sweeping through the Midwest, you have my condolences, and I share my thoughts and feelings with everyone affected by that. Hey, enjoy your weekend of football, NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, whatever you happen to watch. Of course, you're going to be watching some football, though, as well. Remember to play hard, but tailgate harder, and I'll see all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.